Truth for the battered but proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for the day, and we also have Sean Phelan, Agent of Chaos.
Hello, how are you?
Here in studio, here in the Liberty Closet again. We're broadcasting remote. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Andrew is out for the day, so
He's a busy guy.
No, he's a busy guy. He's doing stuff. He's running a business. Busy guy. So we're happy to come in and talk about freedom and liberty in New York State.
Bring the show down a notch or two,
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
Just
it's fine.
Tiny bit.
So that's so it goes. But
Fake News Friday.
It is Fake News Friday, so I hope you got some fake news items lined up.
Of course,
maybe.
Always
All right,
do,
good,
good.
Good.
You know that Florida man, he's always up to something.
Oh boy, all right. You got to expand your horizon, Sean. You got to expand beyond Florida man.
But with Florida man though, Florida man just leaves it like it could be open to the possibilities of everything.
Yeah, well, there's so many great political stories out there. There's so many. Again, what I love about Fake News Friday is that the news itself is so bizarre that it gets hard to tell whether or not it's a real news story or a satire news story. And that's what I love about Fake News Friday is that, man, reality's gotten weird. Maybe it's always been weird and I've just noticed it more, but man, news is weird.
I think it's always been weird. It's just that news is more accessible nowadays, and the more juicier the story, the more it travels around.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Well, I do have two great fake news items that are related to politics, and then you got your thing, so we'll get to that in the last segment of the show. But I did want to start out today with recognizing really a national hero, but like Rochester loves to claim him, Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, happy birthday.
It's Frederick Douglass's birthday, or at least today we acknowledge Frederick Douglass's birthday. He was, of course, born a slave in the South and in the pre-Civil War era, and he doesn't know his exact date of birth. He was told that he was born somewhere in February, so he had just picked a date because, again, keeping in mind that the system of slavery robbed humans of their humanity. They robbed people of their agency. They tried to alienate people from their ancestry, from their connection with birth, from their parents by literally ripping families apart and taking children and selling them to other people. And they had created this system that was totally antithetical to the concept of individual liberty and libertarianism. And some of the great heroes at the time, like Frederick Douglass, fought very hard to preserve or to fight that system and to create and instill a sense of individual liberty among the slaves themselves in both the pre-Civil War era and the Reconstruction period.
Yeah, I was probably about 10 years old the first time I cursed in front of my parents. And it was due to watching the movie Roots.
Oh, yeah?
And we watched it, and it was like this 12-part thing that was on every night, and it was like 2-3 hours every time. And, we were watching the whole thing, and it was a big thing when it came out and everything like that. And a lot of people were talking about it. And then into maybe the 6th or 7th episode when things were getting really, really ugly, I found out it was real. Yeah. I thought it was fiction, and so that was when I turned around and went, what the, and I cursed in front of my parents. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I was totally woke at that point about that situation.
Right.
You
And
know?
yeah. That can be a very powerful thing. And if you've never read Frederick Douglass's biography, I recommend reading that too. And there's like some interesting points in that biography. Like there's one point in time where he talks about like even under like a system of like brutal crushing oppression in which he was whipped by this slave overseer who was hired to break him named Covey, and he eventually he fought back because he had kind of almost gotten to the point where he completely lost his sense of humanity. He was to the point where he was almost broken, but he had decided that like, all right, there's small things I can do to say like, no, they don't totally own me, that no, it is worth resisting, it's worth fighting back. And he had gotten in a fight with this overseer, and from then on, he had kind of started to reclaim his humanity. And it's a really powerful story about in his life in this system that sought to dehumanize him so much. He tried to assert his manhood and assert his ability to be able to maintain a sense of autonomy outside of a system that sought to just turn him into a cog for a cotton or agricultural production
And not
economy.
push it so far that he got killed about it.
Yeah, I mean, he could have. I mean, frankly, like
I'm sure a lot of people wanted to
it was
kill
a
him.
it was a system in which violence was totally acceptable, and in which, interestingly enough, the state permitted people to kill slaves. It permitted slave owners to kill their slaves because it was property. But what a slave owner couldn't do is they couldn't free their slaves in the South. That the government prohibited that, and. Again, I want to do a whole episode about Frederick Douglass because he's so fascinating and in his history and like where he kind of evolved on his thinking on various things. And
Any story that involves somebody going from born a slave to rubbing elbows with presidents in the early 1800s, that's a story worth hearing. That's got to be a fascinating thing.
And again, he's a fascinating thinker. Like when he first kind of got into the abolition movement after he emancipated himself and was able to come up north, his kind of flirtation with disunionism by saying that like maybe the North should secede from the Union because it's as long as the North was attaching itself to the slave society, is immoral. And then he had kind of switched around and thought like, well, actually the North, because it has participated in this ugly system, has a moral obligation to free the slaves. And that's where you get into interesting things like did the North have a moral? Did anyone have a moral obligation to use violence to end this violent system? And I think that is one of those rare instances where I think, yeah, maybe that's probably the case.
Yeah. I have two questions for you real quick. One, have you ever seen the movie Confederate States of America?
Yeah, I have seen that.
That I own it. Actually, I own the movie.
Yeah, it's a counterfactual history for those who don't know about what would happen if So I mean, in counterfactual narratives, I would love to talk about that one day too. But that's an interesting one. It's
Spike Lee even financed it, so it was it was really interesting. Yeah. So the second question is Frederick Douglass was he libertarian?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and I posted a podcast asking that question: is Frederick Douglass libertarian? And there's certainly a historian from the Cato Institute who makes the argument that mostly sort of. He was critical of certain things, like he was critical of like coercive wage-based systems like sharecropping, which trapped usually former slaves in a system in which they rented lands from these huge landowners and paid a share of their crop to the whoever owned the landlord in that case. And then they end up getting trapped in this system in which they now had still nothing, right? They still have like a small house on a piece of land, and there was never any opportunity to expand beyond that. And even in some of those cases where they got paid in currency, sometimes they'd get paid in just like a company script, so they could only buy things from the landlord or the company itself. And again, that system itself starts to look eerily similar to the system of slavery in which they had only recently been emancipated from. So he was rightly critical of that, and but what he did write about frequently was and talk about frequently was the powerful force that individualism and economic liberty could have for the newly freed African Americans. He was interestingly enough critical of reparations, even though I think you could even in that time where I think you could make the strongest case for such. but he thought that it was important that people be able to survive on their own merits and be given a fair chance in a system to be able to succeed in a capitalist economy and a free market economy.
Mm-hmm. I break it down a lot simpler than that. I think is, for me, it's you can you're identifying a person as libertarian if they're fighting for freedom and liberty, which is cutting across the grain of whatever the standard of the state happens to be at the time.
Yeah, right. And he certainly was critical of the state, and he was critical of a lot of things.
And the society.
Yeah, all right. So we're coming up on a break. So thanks again for joining us here on Radio Free New York. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at SimpleTech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, SimpleTech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
If you're looking to market and grow your business, make new business connections, and give back to the community in a meaningful way, consider joining the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're the largest suburban chamber in Monroe County, and we offer networking, education, marketing, insurance, and advocacy. You do not need to live or work in Greece to join. Our members come from throughout the region. In short, we're better together, and together, we're moving business forward. Visit greecechamber.org or call 585-227-7272 to join today.
Tom Walls started in 1955. Since then, America has been through wars, natural disasters, and economic highs and lows. Rochester companies have had their ups and downs, but one constant, Tom Walls. Tom Walls has stood the test of time. A Wahlburger and a frosted mug of root beer on a sunny afternoon brings us closer to our past and reminds us of what is good. My name is Riley. I am Tom Walls.
Share the good times. Tom Walls.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Radio Free New York. I'm Kevin Wilson in hosting today, and we also have Sean Phelan,
Agent of Chaos.
the Agent of Chaos, in here as well, over here in the Liberty Closet,
I've been well
broadcasting
tamed.
remotely. Yeah, no, you have, doing good. And all right, yeah, we got a comment about from Sean about how it's not libertarian to mandate anything. So people should know. Oh yeah, Sean, you're already starting our conversation about mandatory voting. Sean Williams is not you. No, but we do need to start that. But again,
that is one of the topics.
Yeah. So just to wrap up the Frederick Douglass thing real quick, again, I want to do a whole episode on him.
Yeah.
It is Black History Month too, and I feel like we need to focus on some like the African American history, especially as it relates to like some of the movements, the intellectual movements that we care about, and I think that'd be fascinating. So I want to do a whole show on that. We just been trying to get that together.
Deservingly so.
Yeah, no, it's important. But we do want to talk about mandatory voting. And again, Sean Williams jumped the gun here. Says it's not very libertarian to mandate anything. People should know. Certainly live up to their obligation to vote without being mandated to, but to impose any type of consequences for failing to do so spits in the face of basic principles of freedom and liberty. Yeah, I mean, I roughly agree with that, right?
Yeah, well, there's a California,
but let's right.
Pushing it. Well, I mean, if Sean's going to push the conversation, then
no. We're going to talk about this now, right? So tell us about what's going on in California, Sean.
Well, there's a politician out there in California, and he is pushing for a bill right now that will require everyone who's a registered voter to actually vote, which I don't like because of everything that Sean Williams just said.
Yeah.
But I think if they actually went and did it, I think it would blow up in their faces.
Yeah.
Because I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just wishful thinking here, but I feel a lot of people don't go out and vote who are registered voters because they're disenfranchised with whatever the Democrats or Republicans have to offer them.
Right, if you're disillusioned with the system.
Yeah, so if they're forced to vote, they're going to go, well, screw you. I'm going to turn around and vote Libertarian, or I'm going to vote Green, or whatever. And I think it might actually blow up in their faces trying to, force people to get the, more Democratic
Maybe.
or more Republican vote. But I think there's a good chance it might blow up in their faces.
Yeah, so we'll kind of segment this into two separate topics here, right? So topic number one is this a good idea? And topic number two is, will this end up helping third parties at all? Which is what your assertion is.
Well, let's take the standard approach to the first part of that. Is it a good thing to do? If it's mandated by the government, it's automatically a bad thing to do. Just by default.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a position to take. I mean, I generally default to it's not that it's necessarily like whatever the government's mandating isn't necessarily bad, but the mechanism of government doing that usually has a lot of unintended consequences that outweigh the good that they are intending to do.
And what's going to be the crime? What's going to be the penalty for not voting?
That's a great question. I'm looking for it in the article right now because I'd only skimmed it and I was trying to find that part. But I do want to read what the argument is in favor of this. And this is coming from the LA Times, and we'll post a link to this in the stream so you guys can read it too. But this is quoting an assemblyman who's promoting this bill. It says, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires the active participation of all of its citizens. The bill's author, Assemblyman Mark Levine, D. San Rafael, said in a written statement, California is a national leader on expanding voting rights to its citizens. Those rights come with a responsibility by registered voters to cast a ballot and make sure that their voice is heard by their government. And it also goes on to say that there are compulsory voting laws in a lot of places like Australia, Belgium, and Brazil, which have hilarious results in a lot of cases. So, it's funny because in a lot of those places, when you mandate voting, what ends up happening is that you get more participation, but some people are like, all right, I got to vote. All right, I'm going to show up and vote for Mickey Mouse. I'm going to show up and vote for his comedian. I'm going to go.
We'll get Vermin Supreme.
Yeah, right.
with Lord Boothead.
Yeah, all right, Vermin Supreme, this is your strategy. Yeah, Lord Buckethead over there. Vermin Supreme, this is your strategy to win. Mandate voting, and people will vote for you, ironically, because they're mad that they're forced to vote, and then you'll win.
And
Vermin, if you're listening.
And everyone loves ponies.
Everyone loves ponies. He's a tyrant you can trust, guys.
Did you hear him singing down the street?
No, I mean, I'm sure he's done that a lot.
Oh, he's doing the Old Town Road song. And I'm gonna ride my pony to the hotel pool, gonna watch her swim.
Yeah, and I got another comment. I'm getting a text from the producer, and he said that you should have a right to abstain from voting, and that you should be able to vote for none of the above.
It's funny because we have NOTA in our voting process. None of the above.
NOTA is always an option, in Libertarian Party functions specifically.
And so is Ruben.
All right. Yes. Well, yeah. Well, always when you're there, anyway. There always seems to be a vote for Ruben.
I have nothing to do with it, believe it or not.
but anyway, in California, it's interesting because in 2018 they had a turnout rate of 64.5, which really ain't that bad, honestly. Like, it seems like most people are showing up anyway, which good for them, I guess. I think in
What's in New York, like 30?
presidential years it tends to hover around 50. In
Yeah.
midterm election years it tends to be a bit lower. In local election years it's like, I think in my county ledge district there wasn't even a general election, and even in the primary election it was like 17% of Democratic voters showed up. Like, it was, and that's of Democratic voters voting in their own primary, not the entirety of the. I mean, it was pretty low. And maybe I'm getting that mixed up, but the point is that voter turnout in New York isn't particularly high, and I'm even surprised that it's as high as it is in California. They have an interesting voting system in which they have like a top two voting system. So they have like an open race that's like a primary for everyone, and then whatever top two candidates, it could be two Democrats, two Republicans, Democrat and Republican, Republican and Libertarian, like whatever it is. There's the system where a system where two people end up getting elected to run in the general election, and it's a runoff style, which
It's interesting.
yeah, I'm not sure that it works better, but I mean, I guess they are getting better turnout, but not good enough according to these California
Anything's got to be better
legislators.
than putting together an app that you tried to rig and it blew up when you tried to use it.
Oh, good old Iowa. Poor Iowa. That's a.
Do they finally get an answer yet? Who won?
Actually, I haven't checked recently. Like when I checked, like at the end of last week, they're still kind of saying that AP wasn't calling the race. I mean, what's I think right now, Pete Buttigieg ended up with one more delegate than Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders has won the popular vote just because of the way it works.
I think that's just the way it works with the Democrats all the time.
Yeah, no, and that whole system is a mess. And caucusing is a whole other different beast, and that's where you kind of show up and you say that you're for candidate X or candidate Y, and everyone has their own preferences. And then candidates who have only a few people supporting them at this caucus are eliminated, so those people have to go to support another candidate, and